Hi, again, my name is Christina, and today I would like to talk to you about manifesting. Okay, so backtracking, my goal is to be a life coach for women everywhere. I want to help raise their energy vibrations to achieve success in love and life. Okay, I want to do this eventually through shadow work, yoga, diet, exercise, different experiences in nature, meditation, breath work, chanting, and helping people to align their goals with their values. Okay. So I guess to start off with, I guess my question would be, why are there so many people that are unhappy that we're having to um, get help? And I think a lot of that has to do with we're having difficulty manifesting our life the way that we envisioned it. You know, when we were children, we had dreams of certain things, right? And I think a lot of times when we backtrack to that childhood, we can kind of reflect on that. And our lives may or may not be aligned with that. But as we grow and we have different experiences, I think those goals and visions, they start to change. Part of that is because we're conditioned by society. Sometimes it's we have responsibilities that we have to meet. But the bottom line is a lot of us are unhappy. We're not feeling, we're missing out on love. We're missing out on the career we always wanted. We're not, the bottom line is our goals are not aligned with our purpose, I think. And I can start off by talking about a hierarchy of values. So obviously, if you are not getting the food you need, if you don't have the house that, if you're not living in a house and you're homeless, whatever, obviously that's not at the top of the list of things that you're able to achieve. You're not able to achieve that happiness because that is where your goals are. But for those people who are, able to meet those needs, a lot of times, we want these goals. Like, for example, one of my goals had been to lose weight for a long time. And I was trying different fad diets. I tried dieting the way I had when I was younger. And I just was not successful in it. And so, but what I came to realize is that my values, what I had valued at one time, was not aligning with what I was valuing this time. So in other words, I had put all my time into my work. I had put all my time into relationships. And at the end of the day, there wasn't any time left to work out and to really decide how I wanted to diet. So it took me kind of changing my values and going back to that and saying, okay, now if I value this, what can I cut out in order to achieve this, right? But our values will always dictate our destiny. So if your values are not in line with your goals, it's going to be near impossible to achieve it. And I'm going to just say that it doesn't matter how excited you are about this. You kind of get yourself really excited. You get yourself worked up. You get a gym membership. And then you go to the gym first day, really excited. Things are working out. You're checking off all the boxes of, I did this calorie counting, whatever. But after a while, that isn't really enough to sustain you because that's not something that you value, or that's not where your top values are. If you're really valuing work and relationships and all of that, at what point, you got to consider money, you got to consider time. And at the end of the day, you're not going to have those resources, right? So that's important to consider when you do decide that you have something that you want to achieve, right? Um, I also think that making space for change in perspective. Um, when you start to look at something, you might have one view. Like, for example, when I first started dieting, I was a vegetarian. Um, but then when I hurt my arm, I had to change that perspective and say, what do I need in order to heal? Well, I needed meat, you know? And so even though I valued being a vegetarian, I had to change that perspective and look at it from a different way. And so I started looking at vegetarianism as, okay, I realize I don't have control over saving all of the animals from all of this cruelty. It's still happening, even though I'm a vegetarian, even though I don't like it. But I had to change space for that perspective to change in order to achieve the success I wanted, which was to heal my shoulder. So, and then also just leave space for leave space for things to change and evolve. So at first when I dieted, I just wanted to lose weight. But as I started getting into more shape, my focus was no longer on losing weight, but it was getting really good at yoga. And so over time, those goals, those values, again, are going to change. So it's important that we don't kind of get hooked on the outcome, because that outcome at one point may evolve into something else, right? Let's see. I wrote down a bunch of stuff. Let's see. Being a witness to your own triggers and blockages. So when I spoke yesterday, I spoke on fear. But that's just one block, right? Low self-confidence. If you do not feel like you're capable of manifesting something, it doesn't matter how often you think about it, you dream about it, you say it, you do these positive affirmations. If you don't feel good about yourself, you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. And shame and guilt. Sometimes we don't feel like we deserve whatever that we're after. I think for a long time, my self-confidence was incredibly low, and I did not think I deserved some of the things that I really wanted. And so sometimes you can be your own worst enemy and stand in your own way. And I did that frequently. Trauma. I do think addressing past trauma is very difficult. A lot of people have post-traumatic syndrome. And I can go into that another time. But the big thing that I would like to say about that is, if trauma is standing in your way, I guess the big thing is, I think a lot of people think that they have to be completely healed in order to move forward in their life. And that's not true. You can heal as you go. You can. I have had trauma. I think a lot of people have had trauma. And honestly, if we don't have something in our life that shakes us up, that totally changes our life, turns it all topsy-turvy, our lives, a lot of times we're not going to change, right? We're not going to evolve. Like, what's the point? Why go through all that extra effort? Why sweat and cry? Because it's just not going to happen, you know? So I think sometimes the universe, like, just allows these things to happen so that we can make the changes that we need to be more aligned with why we're here. That's my belief. It may conflict with other people's, but I believe strongly that that's huge. Personal development, learning new skills. So a lot of times there's a certain skill set that we need to learn in order to do something. And it's important to invest in that personal development, to really just sit in that level of discomfort, because it's very hard to be an adult learner. I'm just going to be honest, because you have to go through a very awkward period of learning, of doing things wrong, making mistakes, and you're not used to that. As an adult, you're just not. So that's huge. And, you know, when I talk about shadow work, a lot of people don't really know what that is. And shadow work is a lot of it has to do with journaling, self-reflecting, and sitting in stillness, letting go of emotions. So a lot of these blocks can be addressed. Let's see. I also wanted to talk about commitment. So once you've defined your goal, you kind of work backwards. So what do you need to do to achieve this goal? So that's your mission, right? So you have this vision of what you want to achieve. I want to lose 60 pounds, right? What do I need to do to achieve this weight loss? And I'm just going to stick with this example, but listing out all of those things like exercising. When I wanted to lose weight, I didn't even start off with exercise. I started off with stretching. Like I wasn't even able to touch my toes anymore. I barely could get up off the floor anymore. I mean, it was embarrassing. That idea of exercise was so far into the future, I couldn't even envision that at the time. But I started small, and that's kind of what it takes, is those baby steps. Being realistic. It is important to consider time. And that goes back to our values. Remember, the values have to align with our goals. So, okay, I'm going to go back to the exercise thing. I only had 4 days off a week to exercise. And once I got into a certain level of shape, I needed to do more. I didn't want to continue to add time to those 4 days. So I wanted to add it to my morning routine, but I worked 12, 13-hour shifts, right? So how do you do that when you work long shifts, when work is also a value? And so what I was doing was getting up 30 minutes earlier. And that's how it started. I would get up for 30 minutes early, do just 30 minutes of yoga, which it didn't feel like that much, but it just kind of kept that momentum going. It kept me in a place to where once I was done with those 3 days and then I did work out, I was able to kind of keep that momentum going. I wasn't constantly working out, falling backwards, working out, falling backwards. So I made that time money. I know things are tight, and a lot of times people, as soon as they earn a paycheck, it's all already accounted for before you even earn that money. And again, money also goes with our values. So if we value something, we will find a way to make that happen with money. We will. Money can always be cut back in the smallest ways, and those little small changes that you make do transfer over into a bigger, you can say, oh, a coffee is just what, $4? Like, that's not a big deal. But how many times are you buying that coffee, right? When you could just buy a coffee pot and make your own coffee and save yourself money. So you need to consider that. So when you're looking at time, value, and money, and you're looking at the connectedness of it all, you're going to be able to start looking at your goals, your dreams, your desires more realistically. Taking baby steps. When I first, I'm just going to keep on using this exercise goal because it's the easiest one. Everyone can relate to this, right? When I first started exercising, again, it was very small changes. I did not, if somebody was to ask me how I eat now, it would be so incredibly unrealistic for them to achieve that because that's not where they're at. You have to meet yourself where you are at. So if you are going to McDonald's, let's just say every single day because it's the easiest thing to do on the way to work, on the way home, whatever, then maybe that is just your first goal. Just cut out something, one thing. It doesn't even have to be huge, but take that small step, because when you take that step, as you can see, it makes a difference. It's made a difference in me. I know it can make a difference in anyone. I call this tribe vibe. Find support. I always say, don't tell everybody your dreams, your desires, and your goals. Not everybody is supportive of that. Not everybody is going to give you the advice that you need. For example, if I want to have a relationship, a successful relationship, I'm not going to talk to somebody who has a difficult time with that, because that's not, I'm not going to get valuable advice from them. But if I do want to achieve something, I'm going to find somebody that's inspiring. I'm going to read books that has to do with that. I'm going to listen to audio tapes that has to do with that. I'm going to find ways to learn. Education anymore doesn't have to cost anything. It doesn't. There's Google. I mean, you can literally look up anything on Google. Facebook has support groups. There's support groups everywhere. So even if it's addiction that you're struggling with, there are support groups for everything. I mean, if you're suicidal, if you want to lose weight, there's a support group. So even just in your friends, pick the friends that inspire you to be where you're not, that have achieved what you want to achieve, you know? Action speaks louder than words, right? It's one thing to say, this is what I want, and to say it over and over and over. Something I found, though, with myself, at one point I lost respect for myself, because I had been saying for so long I wanted to lose weight. I think it was probably 5-6 years before I actually did the action that was going to start achieving those goals. There is manifesting. You can manifest things, but you just can't do it. You can't just do it with the mind. You have to think these things, but then start to act on it, because as you start to act on it, you start meeting people that, like, for example, let's just say I want to get into yoga, right? I go to a yoga studio. I'm going to start meeting other people who are yogis. As I do the yoga, they're going to offer me help. Then we're going to start going out and doing things. Maybe we're going to go do paddleboarding together. You start meeting people that are more active, and that's allowing opportunities for growth. And again, I'm just going to say this because it's probably one of my famous, or not my famous quotes, but it's somebody else's famous quote, but it's one of my favorite quotes. It's, action is the highest form of prayer. You can pray until the sun goes down, but unless you're willing to take that action, it's not going to happen. It's just not. Let me see. Accountability. All right. So blaming outside forces for your situation. I do that. Everybody I know does that. We can blame our trauma. It's hot as heck out here, by the way. We can blame trauma. We can say my wife, my husband, whatever, isn't supportive. But when it comes down to it, who's really responsible for whatever it is that you want? No one else but you. So sit in that. Feel that. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It is. It's okay to feel uncomfortable in that, because it's not meant to put yourself down. It's not meant to feel bad, but it is meant to feel uncomfortable. Because when you're uncomfortable, you don't want to stay that way. And you want to take responsibility for what needs done. What you want done, I guess, is a better way of putting it. So I do feel that blaming outside forces it's definitely a block. And it's often, I call it victim mentality. It's feeling like everything happens to me and you have no control over the outcome. And I'll be honest, when I when I was in my mid-20s, I was a single mother of 5 children. And I had left an abusive relationship. And I very easily could have blamed my circumstances on all of that and stayed on that road. But I wanted something more. I wanted different. And so I started looking into college. I started taking small steps. I started exploring my passions. I started looking deeper into what I really wanted. And I thought to myself, what do I truly, who am I? I guess that was my starting question, is who am I? What am I good at? What am I passionate about? And the only thing I knew was that I loved taking care of people, and I was really interested in health. And it started there. And, it was going to college, and I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I took classes on business. I took classes on computer programming, teaching. I took all these different classes before I finally found my passion. And as soon as I got into anatomy, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be at that time, right? So it just kind of starts to lead you towards where you need to be. Being responsible. 5, not getting attached to the outcome. Oh my gosh, I'm a Virgo, totally famous for being attached to the outcome, thinking that things have to be a certain way. And then what does that lead to? Because one, like I mentioned before, our outcomes usually evolve. It's not, sometimes we have a very, very, very specific outcome in mind. And when we do that, we block ourselves from the opportunities that might happen that could make our lives even better. But not just that, if you're concentrated on this outcome, you're not enjoying the journey. Part of the journey is learning. Part of the journey is tripping and falling. It's in figuring out what you're good at and what you're not. It's enjoying the process. Just live in that. It's okay to not be where you want to be. Sometimes you never even get exactly to where you want to be. I joined this group, I think it was about 1.5 years ago, for love. And still single. But in the process of doing that, I found self-love. And I found a huge support group. I found another opportunity for me, which is this. And my life's evolving. And I do think it's going to happen, just not in my time, So if I got attached to that outcome, what would I think? I would think I'm a failure. I would think I'm not lovable, right? Our path becomes more apparent as we take the journey. We evolve and we become inspired. I'm just going to give you an example. I love Matt Rife. I think he's awesome. I think he's funny as heck. Very successful, but he worked for a while to get to that level of success. And it's funny because I actually looked at tickets for one of his comedy shows, and super expensive, so expensive. I'm like, what the heck? Like, who can afford $1,200 a seat? But anyway, totally off the subject, shiny thing. So Matt Rife, I started looking at some of the qualities that he had that inspired me. Why did I listen to him? Why did I watch his comedy shows? It wasn't just because he was funny. I loved how he interacted with his audience. I really loved how he aspired to be a comedian. And he didn't come from a family of comedians. He didn't come from a family of actors. He literally started from the bottom up. That took courage. That took drive. It took making small goals. It took messing up and falling. And he still, messes up and falls. But I think the biggest thing I loved about him was that, and he said this, everybody has troubles. And if you look around, somebody always has it worse. So find the gratitude, find the humor in your life. So inspiration, I always look to people, things, books for inspiration. And sometimes I try to be creative. I look to my own passions for inspiration. How can I turn something into something else? When you are real as fuck, people can relate to you and you glow. So just be real. Just be who you are. Don't be what you think other people want you to be. I mean, if you're gay, be gay. If you are not always very happy, maybe work on that, but be yourself. Like, if you don't come off as okay, I'm going to go back to my post. I wanted so bad to be graceful. Oh my gosh, some of the most famous women in the world are incredibly graceful. I wanted so bad to be one of those graceful women. I am just not graceful. I don't have that perfect yoga voice. But I'm me. I'm passionate. I mean, look at my crazy hair. I'm passionate. And that's me. And that's who I want to be now. And so just be yourself. And I think when you figure out who that person is, when you dig deep into what your passions are, what inspires you, where you want to go, and be specific with that, you are going to have to get to the point to where you are heart versus head. So now I know what I want, and I want this so bad, it's killing me. But that's where the blocks start to show up, right? That's where you start to fight with yourself. That's where you start to make excuses. That's where you become the victim. That's where you have self-doubt. And it's so much easier to just sit in that place of comfort, right? Nobody wants to go through the process of that change. But when you get rid of those blocks, when you make that commitment, you'll be okay. I had an experience where I went and I got my master's degree to get into management. And I really struggled with being unhappy in management. And I couldn't figure out why I was so unhappy when I wanted this so bad. So I sat down and I wrote a list of pros and cons. And ironically, the management list, those pros were way longer than the list to go back into nursing. But, so I thought to myself, this doesn't make any sense. I'm still unhappy. It doesn't matter how many pros there are for management, I'm still unhappy. So then I started thinking to myself, yeah, but what do I value most? And it was work-life balance and being around the people that I love and being able to take vacation. I didn't want to just live to work. And when I realized that, that was my aha moment. That was when the light went off. And I knew, regardless of what I had done with going to college, that I needed to step down and go back into nursing. And I did it as kind of a trial run. I had the opportunity during COVID to go backwards and try it and see how I felt about it. And yeah, I was happy. So I think when we sit there and we are looking at our values and we're kind of stuck in our own head, sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you need to sit there and figure out what your values are and kind of go backwards before you can move forwards, And then I would say the last thing is building trust in yourself. Find something in your life that you have found success. I remember when I wanted to lose weight. I remember thinking to myself, I just can't do it. It must be my age. It's got to be menopause. It's got to be something, because no matter how hard I try, I am not successful at losing weight, no matter what I do. And I started thinking back, my God, I raised 5 kids by myself. I went to college and got my master's degree. I have traveled all over the United States. I have done so much. Why am I not successful in this? And I started looking back at what it took to do those things, those big things. And it took me doing exactly what I'm telling you now. And when I did that, that's when I was finally successful. It wasn't a magic diet. It wasn't a pill. It wasn't anything but me sitting there and aligning my values with my goals, committing to making small steps, not getting attached to the outcome. I didn't even know for sure how much weight I wanted to lose. I mean, I would have been happy with 10 pounds, but then once I achieved the 10 pounds, I was like, okay, let's try for 10 more. And I just kept going, committing to it, taking accountability, being responsible for what's going on. And just remembering that small successes add up. My sister once told me about, what are they called again? You know those water spout things where you pump it and the water comes out. And when you first start pumping it, you get like a gerbil, right? A lot of times they have them at parks. Anyway, you keep on pumping it. And it's not until you get a good, steady pump going, right, that you get that steady flow of water. That momentum is what pushes change. 1 pump, 2 pump, 2, 3 pumps. Stop. What do you got to do when you go back? You got to start all over again. You got to get a good momentum going. You got to get pumping. And then that's when you're going to that's when change occurs. And just remember that there are periods of, once you do start this momentum, sometimes it just kind of plateaus. And when I start getting that plateau, I don't know if you guys can hear the crickets. Now I feel like I'm talking over them. And I'm in the dark. But anyway, so we're just about to close. But I just want you to know that once you start getting that momentum going, try not to let go, because when you get that plateau, it's okay. Use that time to reflect. Just sit in that. Reflect on what you're doing right, what you're doing, what's not working, what you could change. And sometimes it's just doing the same thing. And eventually that outcome is going to happen. It's not always, change doesn't always occur like this. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes back down, sometimes it levels off. Just be okay with that. And I just want you all to know that I truly love the support that I'm getting with this change that I'm trying to make in my life. I love my tribe vibe. And I'm just going to leave you all with love, light, and joy. Namaste.